Hello, I'm Kelly Taylor Ryan, and welcome to Mainely Unspoken. Today our guest is Eugene, who's an instructor for the Constitutions. Welcome, Eugene.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're an instructor for the Constitutions. You mean all the Constitutions of the United States?
You got it. Either the state and the U.S.
And the U.S., okay.
Yes.
But your area of expertise is actually on the state constitutions.
Primarily interested in the state constitutions for one reason.
And what's that?
In order to understand the U.S. Constitution, it's very important that we have a foundation and understanding of our state constitution to determine how and why they were written up and who controls what.
Okay.
So understanding that will lead you to a better understanding of your federal.
Is the state constitution more important than the federal constitution, or more powerful?
Oh, the state is more powerful. Look at it this way. Who created or what created the federal constitution?
Well, the states.
The states. So he who creates cannot be less than the created.
Okay, all right. But you know what amazes me is that a lot of people don't even know we have a state constitution. I don't know what happened to the educational system, but we really aren't really taught that.
Well, you mentioned before that you met a gentleman who it took him 50 years before he found out there was such a thing as a state constitution.
Robert Schultz, yeah.
Well, it took me about 40 years.
Uh-huh.
And I had gone through the school system just like everybody else. I never knew the state constitution existed, never heard of it, not taught it. And it wasn't until I got, should we say, disillusioned with government that I went on a search, and that's when I found out there was such a thing.
And you found out it was very powerful. Is that kind of a reason why they don't tell us about it, maybe?
Well, to keep you ignorant of the Constitution and its laws is to whose benefit, government's or yours?
Not mine.
And this is what started this is what started me out on this track. I can remember that they had changed the income tax law. This is what they told me. And
For the state income tax?
No, I'm sorry. For the federal income tax.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, great. I'm now going to, I got a windfall here. Because what I used to do, I was very smart. Every year I would say, at that time, I want $600 coming back from the federal and $300 coming back from the state. Mm-hmm. And I would work my figures until I got that. Mm-hmm. This time, after they passed this law, I was owing something like $1,200 to the federal and $600 to the state. And I said, okay, I took it to a tax attorney. He got me owing more.
Oh, dear.
At that point in time, I said, tilt, something is wrong here. I've been lied to. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started my research.
Okay. What did you learn? What's the most important thing for people to know when they're looking at the state constitution? I mean, isn't it difficult to read?
Negative. It's very simple, very clear. The problem is they've been instilled into their minds that they cannot read the state constitution. It's Old English because maybe one or two words. Mm-hmm. But if you, later on when we get into it, you'll see it's very clear, very distinct. Mm. It is not difficult to read, but the problem is people say they don't know the law. They can't read the law. It has to be interpreted. Mistake. It cannot be interpreted by any government agent.
The law can't?
The Constitution, that state constitution, cannot be interpreted by anyone in government.
Well, what do we have courts for then?
Not to interpret the Constitution.
Not to interpret the Constitution.
And if anybody can produce a law that authorizes anybody in government to interpret it, I'd like to see it. Number one, even the judges do not interpret it. What they do is they write an opinion on a statute, on a government law. And then they say, well, that's not, or it is repugnant to the Constitution, but they never write an interpretation.
Okay. But they're kind of making an interpretation when they say they're judging whether a statute is repugnant or not.
Well, I'd have to go back and ask you, what is your definition of the word interpretation? And interpretation would mean that, for an example, I don't know what it is in the Maine, but in Massachusetts and Maine it's going to be almost the same.
Mm-hmm.
It says, no subject shall be held to answer for any crime or offense until the same is plainly, fully, substantially, and formally described to him,
Mm-hmm.
nor be compelled to accuse or furnish evidence against himself.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like the Fifth Amendment there.
Yes,
In the U.S. Constitution.
but that's the law, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Let me take a famous example. You're driving home tonight. Police officer stops you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first thing he's probably going to ask you
He
for?
wants my driver's license and registration.
But what does that law say?
Well, I'm furnishing information against me without knowing why I'm being stopped.
So what the judges say, oh, it doesn't mean that. Oh, wait a minute. What do you mean? See, now, let's say, for an example, even you, let's say you take that, what I just mentioned, and you have a different understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
And your understanding gives government power.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding keeps the power in the people. Which one must take precedent?
Well, yours.
Why? Because it says in the book, it's a Declaration of Rights of the inhabitants,
Right.
or of the people.
But the government doesn't look at it that way.
No, because you've been led to believe only judges and lawyers know the law.
But who enforces the law?
Now, whenever you mention the word law, I have to qualify you.
Okay.
What law are you referring to? The law that is written in the state constitution or in the federal constitution, or the law passed by government?
Well, I would imagine the laws and statutes passed by the state government.
Okay, those types of laws have to be qualified because the government cannot, or the legislature cannot, nor may not, pass any rule, regulation, ordinance, whatever you want, that is repugnant or contrary to that document.
But they do it all the time.
Yes, I understand that.
They do it all the time. And I remember there was this, they had the People's Court in adult education in Maine. And there was a constitutional attorney, and I'll never forget, the first thing he did in opening up the class, he opened up the federal constitution, or maybe it was the state constitution, and he states, says right here that you all can have guns. He says, but, you know, there's 25,000 laws out there regulating how you can carry that gun if you can carry it at all. He says, so that makes this Constitution kind of useless. The law is what the judge tells us it is. This is what an attorney is telling the people of Maine.
That's what is real out there. That is exactly what is happening. But obviously that's wrong, isn't it?
It is wrong, absolutely.
Because as a republic, and I think you understand what a republic is, it's a country or a state of laws. We're controlled by laws and not of men.
Right.
What have we done?
We've been controlled by men, not laws.
By judges.
By judges, right.
In
Which
fact, I gave you, I think, an opinion because they tried taking a judge to court.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Massachusetts, it states that we have a right to counsel, and counsel is spelled C-O-U-N-C-I-L. Okay? The judges are saying, no, we recognize it says C-I-L, but we consider it to read S-E-L.
So it's as they interpret it.
No, well, they didn't. That's not an interpretation, is it? It's changing the spelling of the word.
To meet their interpretation.
To meet whatever their understanding is.
And how can they do that? You can't change spellings.
Okay, here's how they do that. I took a judge to court. He ruled that he could not be sued because he has absolute judicial immunity, meaning anything he does on the bench, he cannot be held accountable for. King George all over again, divine rule.
Yeah.
In other words, if you cannot be held accountable for anything you do on the bench, aren't you a god? Divine, you got to have some divine authority.
So what does the state constitution say about judges? do they have immunity?
Every office in the government is protected, and I will stand up for that. You will not harm or you will not threaten any person who's in their office. But here's what people forget. For an example, people say, write to your senator, write to your representative. I say, no, don't you dare.
Why not?
You're not allowed. I don't want you talking to your representative. It's mine, too. It's ours. It's the people's. You got something to say to him, you go to your town fathers.
Your town fathers?
They're the only ones who can speak to your representatives, because that's not your personal representative. You have no right, no duty, no power to go and take that man's time or woman's time for your personal interest.
But the government always tells us to write to our representatives.
Oh, well, of course. You know why? That's the power base. And they're going to tell you what you want to hear, don't they? Mm. If you're a student, the old, the young, the minority, guess what? That representative tells them whatever they want to hear.
So it's easier to control the people that way.
You got it.
But if you talk to your selectman, your mayor, then they're more personally responsible, and you have a personal rapport with them where they can't lie to you so easily.
You got it. They meet you on the street, don't they?
Yeah.
You see now?
And then the people controls the government that way.
You got it.
Okay, so they took government so far away from us that it's a laughable game for them.
That's why the U.S. Constitution is so, why people even go to it, I don't understand it, because it has no power. They have no relationship to it. It's not their law. The federal Constitution was written by the states for the states. And do you think the people at that time cared about the U.S. Constitution? No way. They had their towns, they had their state. That's all they needed. It was the state that was concerned. Mm.
Well, what was the 17th Amendment? The state legislatures used to vote for our
senators
yes. Going to Washington.
So they could control, had a certain amount of control.
And protect our state.
Yes.
Okay. But that was changed, and also now the people vote for senators like they vote for yes. federal representatives.
That's the power base. They take somebody like Kennedy. Mm. He's very, very powerful because he's been in there so long. He's got a base. He's got a following. Oh, I'm going to vote for Kennedy. Why? He's a Democrat. Mm. That's all they know.
So how do you get people back into state or town government and have the town government deal with the state and the state deal with the federal government? Oh. Are we ever going to have a governor that tells the federal agents to get out of our state?
Yes.
Oh, we are?
Yes. You have an election coming up real quick, right?
Okay, don't vote for Baldacci.
Oh, wait. No. I didn't say that.
Okay.
You might want to vote him.
Oh,
vote for him.
Why?
Ask him this question. In fact, now that the elections are coming up, I ask everybody, you want to change this country around?
Yes. I want the people in power again.
Very simple. All you have to do is to go up to everybody who's running for an office, and I don't care what office it is. It could be town clerk, anything. I don't care what it is. And ask them if they accept this book as law.
Okay.
That's all it takes.
But they'll give you lip service, and they'll say, "Oh, yes."
Okay.
I ask candidates all the time, do you believe in the founders' philosophies? And they all say yes.
Okay.
And yet, they can't turn around and tell you what those philosophies are.
But I got you. I hope you say that. Because my next question is, who enforces it?
Who enforces it? Okay.
You didn't hear me?
Who enforces the Constitution?
Well, first of all, we already agreed that is the law. It's the supreme law.
Yes.
It's even above the U.S. Constitution.
I would agree to that, yes.
Okay. It's law.
Yes.
If a law can't be enforced, what good is it?
It's useless.
So I'm asking you, who's your law enforcement officer for that document?
Well, I would imagine for the state of Maine, it would be the Attorney General.
Can I correct you a second?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, what?
I don't care what you think.
Okay.
I asked you a question. Who's the law enforcement officer?
Who's the law enforcement officer? It would be the governor.
So I have a complaint against the governor, and I'm going to go to that person and say, you violated the law, punish yourself.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't do that, right, yeah.
So whose law? It's not the governor's law, is it? They have to abide by this law.
And the people have to enforce it.
So how can they enforce it?
Okay.
There's
a conflict of interest.
Well, I don't know. Well, let me ask you a question. In your home, let's say you have the power and the authority to establish a rule or a law. And let's say one of those laws says no TV after 9 o'clock. Now there's a program comes on that you want to watch. And it comes on at 10 o'clock. And you're watching it. Who's going to enforce that law upon you?
Well, nobody, because I made
Well,
the law, so I can...
no, you got to punish yourself, don't you?
But I won't.
Got the message?
Okay.
So government cannot enforce the document. Now, this leads us to one other thing. We refer to our towns as governments, don't we? No, they're not. They are a government, but they're not a government under this. They are not subject to this document. The town is not. The town is a pure democracy.
The town of Scarborough is not
Subject to it.
subject to the state of Maine Constitution?
You got it. Because it's their law. The towns...
So they can break the law?
Oh, no. Remember, that's their law written for their protection. So they're very jealous of this. They want it enforced. And the only way it can be enforced is through the town fathers.
Okay, so the state constitution is to protect us from the state government.
You got it.
Okay, all right, I've got it. I see.
Who's the biggest killer of people? Governments.
Government and doctors?
Well, I don't know if I go so far as say doctors, but I would say government does, yes, because governments control doctors. Okay, yeah. And this is the one, and what gets me, it's so simple and it's so clear. If you would just get out, go to your town clerk, go to every person who is being or running for office and ask them those two simple questions.
So ask them, do you support this?
No.
No? Okay.
You have to be very careful
Okay.
in the wording. Do you consider that document to be law?
Okay,
The supreme law of the land?
Okay, and then who enforces it?
Well, I got to wait for that first answer.
Okay, and it has to be yes.
Well, the first answer probably is going to be a dumb stare.
Okay.
And I said, well, thank you, you've already answered my question. Because obviously, you don't consider it to be you don't consider it to be law.
Oh, they've never read it.
Right. And
How many people, take a poll, how many people have read their state constitutions?
how many know there is one?
That's right. First, do you know there is one, and then have you read it? And I guarantee you that most of the people running, state legislators and people for governor, have not read it, let alone understand what it means.
Yes. Now, whose fault is that?
Societies.
And whose society? Am I looking at one?
Hey, I've got this show. I've been telling everyone for...
But you see,
Read your state constitution. How many times have you guys heard that?
but we've never done anything with it, have we?
It's hard. It's hard
Well-
because our schools aren't teaching it.
Yeah. And why not?
Because it empowers the people.
But nobody's down there saying, listen to me, I'm the boss, I'm the king. See, when I walk into a government building, I don't do it anymore, but when I first started out, my back would straighten up, and I would actually visualize a crown on the top of my head. So when I walked into the office, I'm the boss. And I tried to conduct myself as such, but being a very good boss, okay, very polite, very understanding, knowing that people can't talk about that at this particular point because they don't understand it. So I'm very, very congenial until you start bucking me, until you start telling me, don't, like for an example, I have to commend you on the people in this town hall. When I walked in, I went down to ask for a copy of the state constitution. And I'm going to be curious to see that if you don't find a bunch of copies in your town clerk's office soon for people to pick up and to read. But what happens in many cases, especially some of your bigger cities, they say, well, you have to go to the State House for that, or you have to go there for that. And no, I think you don't quite understand who you are and who I am. See, what happens, government knows who you are. you don't know who they are, and you don't know who you are yourself.
Government doesn't want you to understand how much power the people have.
And they're afraid of that.
And they are afraid of government is afraid of it, and so they don't want the people to be educated about it.
Yeah. And
they want to play it down.
And you want to know why? Because when you start reading that document, there's duties and obligations, and that's what the people are afraid of. I don't care what anybody says. This is a spiritual document. That's why they're afraid of it. Every time I hold a new class, the first question that I ask is that typical question: do you consider the state constitution law? Sometimes they don't know enough, but I will take it and I will take the Constitution and I'll say, this is my law. In order to get to me, you got to come through it. And don't you dare try to violate anything in here. Now, will you enter into a compact with me? Without a doubt, they will not say that. They say, oh, I don't know what's in it. Oh, wait a minute, what difference does that make? Is this the law? It shouldn't make any difference what's in it. This is a compact among you and me. You and me. Are you ready to enter into it?
Well, I think I'm already into it. I mean, everyone that is born into a state, they automatically are compact with the state. No?
Oh, no. It's not a compact with the state. It's a compact between individuals.
I thought this was to protect us from the state.
And how we do that is this is our document. I'm going to have... All right. When I do my instruction, I find that I have to go back to the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay.
The primary reason being it was the first document, first Constitution ever written, and it's still in existence today.
They've never changed the wording or anything?
They have amendments, but so don't... I'll get into that a little bit. I'll answer that question a little bit later.
But the basic document is the original,
right.
Our first Constitution in this country.
And it was written during the Revolutionary War. So these boys, these guys, and it's beyond my belief. They're fighting the biggest empire in the world. Mm-hmm. They're fighting their own government, their own state government, because the state tried to put out draft after draft of a Constitution, and the people towns kept saying, no, 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 no.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The only document in the world that's been written by the towns. Every other state, it was drafted by the governing body at that time.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. So the people of Massachusetts, the towns actually wrote the state constitution.
They elected a committee of 30.
Uh-huh.
And they drafted it, and the towns accepted it.
Okay.
And here's what happened. They announced to the whole world they are non-resident aliens.
They said they were non-resident aliens?
Yes.
Now, what does that mean?
The land now belongs to the people. See, remember, up to this time, all lands belonged to the rulers, to the crown.
Yeah.
In fact, even the early settlers, when they pounded the stakes in the ground, they didn't do it for themselves, they did it for the crown,
Yeah.
okay, for that protection. Oh, no, this was very scary for these people. In effect, what they did, no, government, you don't exist. In fact, the government exists. It says, we're going to dissolve you, and you're going to help us. And we declare these are rules and regulations that we consent to be governed by.
That was very brave of them, yeah.
As long as you abide by these rules, we won't give you a hard time. Mm-hmm. Violate them, you get spanking. Mm-hmm. The way I like to put it is the government had no choice. The government that you've got today had no choice in the matter, did it? The people
because the people said, this is what we want.
Right.
If we want to, this is the government we will allow. These are the rules we will live by.
Right. So they're like a child, aren't they?
The government, right.
But do we ever discipline them?
No, we don't,
No.
Because we can't.
Oh, well, you know what they tell me? Oh, yes, you discipline us all the time. All you have to do is vote us out of office.
Which is impossible.
So you vote out Tweedledee and bring in Tweedledum.
Tweedledum, yeah. You want a Hershey bar or a Nestle Crunch, you know? I mean, it's the same.
But let me get back to this. You want to change.
Right.
How
We're down to 5 minutes, I want you to know. Okay,
oh, okay. Because to me, it's that simple. But what makes it difficult, you've got to stop that town hall personnel, the clerk, the Board of Selectmen, or even your next door neighbor.
Your next door neighbor.
They've got a compact. I want everybody to ask everybody who's running for office, do you consider that document to be law? Now, if your neighbor doesn't consider it to be law, what chance do you have? So you have to educate your next door neighbor,
right.
Your children, get to the schools. You're going to have to, I don't like the word organize, but you have to come together just like our founding fathers did. I mean, they just said, that's the way it is, fella. King George, I'm sorry, you're out. And it's still hard for me to conceive. Go ahead.
And you only can do this on the local level.
Only on the local level.
Because you're building up to the pyramid, and if the local level changes, then the uppers will change.
And everybody wants to run to whom?
The government.
The government, the lawyers, and they don't want to run. They don't even want to run to this government, do they? They want to run to the federal government.
That's right. But because people don't know. Okay, Scarborough and Portland. You need to go and get this little book. It's a great little book called The State of Maine Legislature. It's a Senate House Register. It names everybody that's in the state House and Senate, and it also has the state Constitution of Maine. And you're going to want to read that, at least the first part, which is entitled Declaration of Rights. You have rights that the government doesn't tell you about. But people need to do that. And they need to read, and I bet you a lot of these constitutions, like our Constitution wasn't done until, what, 1820? Because we used to be part of Massachusetts. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. Right.
See, I'm not a historian. Talk about that book, and I'll understand the book, but I'm not that.
But since we used to be part of Massachusetts, then we walked away from our Massachusetts state constitution and we wrote our own.
Okay.
But it must be very similar to the...
Very, very similar.
And all state constitutions are pretty similar.
No, once you get by the original 13, the farther you get out, oh, they're terrible. They're horrible.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, because they're written by attorneys. See, one thing people don't understand, especially in the state and in the U.S., no law is written and passed without a bank of attorneys putting their approval on it.
And the attorneys, are they really representative of the people?
They're not elected, they're not appointed, they're nothing to us. But they are the ones that decide the final wording of it, and obviously it has to be tricky so they have a job.
And also they slide it to the benefit of the government and not the people.
You got it.
We only have about 2 minutes left. So can you believe that? Went by fast.
Oh, yes.
But what would you like people to remember about this show?
About this show? First, I would like to make a statement. Comply with the law, and that law will protect you. So if you have any problem with the law, it's because you are not complying with the law. You comply with what somebody says is the law, and there's a difference, isn't there?
Okay, so what you're saying is if there's some statute that the state legislators wrote, you got to say, well, is that in alignment with the original Constitution? If it's not, then the law has to be taken out of the books because it's not really a law.
It's that simple,
It's that
folks.
simple.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
But you have, and it doesn't, there's only about 6 pages in there that you have to read.
Yep, just about 6 pages in simple language that anyone can read. All right. Well, interesting, isn't it? We have so much power and we just...
You don't know it.
You don't know it. And I wonder how many schools will say, hey guys, this is your state constitution, let's read it. And they should. None. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Eugene. It's been wonderful. You're going to come back and do another show?
Would love to.
Okay.
I'm just getting started.
You're just getting started. All right. Well, everyone, you need to start reading your state constitution. That's where you're going to get your power. You need to start talking to your town founders or your town representatives and get them to read the Constitution too. Make sure they have a copy of it in their office and make sure you have a copy of it in your home. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.